Here in Washington, former special counsel Jack Smith is testifying behind closed doors to a GOP-led committee investigating his investigation of Donald Trump during his time out of power. Smith is rejecting President Trump's allegations that he was out to get him. In his opening statement obtained by CNN, Smith said, quote, "The basis for those charges rests entirely with President Trump and his actions." Republicans have baselessly claimed Smith was part of a Biden administration conspiracy to target Trump. Now, Trump himself recently called Smith deranged and a criminal. My panel is back, and we are joined now by Caitlin Polantz. What do we know so far about this testimony?
Well, Dana, the biggest headline right now is that he's talking. He's not taking the fifth. He's not declining to answer questions. We know that Smith is responding to questions of the committee. That's notable. Not just because it's notable to have this former special counsel testifying for the very first time in a setting like this. It's also notable because...
Hey folks, welcome back. Dr. John is here. This is happening right now. Special counsel Jack Smith has given a closed-door deposition to the House Judiciary Committee, with the transcript and video now released, containing sworn testimony that Trump's allies have dreaded for years. The statements could fundamentally alter the presidency, though the specific details of what he said are not fully detailed here. Let me be direct about what Smith said, because the words themselves are so powerful, they need to be repeated exactly. January 6th does not occur without Trump. He caused it. He exploited it. Those aren't my words. Those aren't the words of some partisan talking head. Those are the words of a federal prosecutor who spent years building a case against the president, who had access to the full scope of evidence, who interviewed dozens of witnesses under oath. And he said under oath himself that the attack on the Capitol doesn't happen without Donald Trump.
The knives are out for him, and there's a lot of possibilities where he could walk into a situation where somebody wants to see him criminally prosecuted, whether that's a court, the Justice Department itself, Trump already out there saying he wants to see him behind bars, or the Republicans on Capitol Hill. They actually had a deputy previously from Smith's investigation. The man who led the January 6th investigation has already gotten a criminal referral for obstructing Congress, for declining to answer some questions in this investigation. And so the perils that Smith has in how he navigates this interview, he can't decline to answer because he could get a referral like Thomas Windom, another prosecutor on his team, for obstruction of Congress. But then if he gives too much information, there's always the possibility that Congress could accuse him of making a false statement if he says something different than what's in the record or what someone else on his team is testifying to. And then there are court orders and Justice Department restrictions around...
Not that Trump was involved, not that Trump had some role, that it literally does not happen without him. That's about as direct and damning as you can possibly get. But here's what makes this testimony even more explosive. Smith revealed that Trump privately admitted he lost the 2020 election. Behind closed doors, Trump was telling people, yeah, I lost. But then he went out in public and told his supporters the election was stolen. He pushed lies to state legislators. He pressured election officials. He organized the entire January 6th rally, knowing full well that he'd actually lost. This isn't speculation anymore. This is the special counsel under oath with evidence saying Trump knew the fraud claims were false and did it anyway. That's consciousness of guilt. That's premeditation. That's exactly what prosecutors dream about when they're building a case.
Information from the classified documents case, evidence from the classified documents case against Trump, the volume 2 of the report under seal, and then grand jury secrecy. So much at stake here that even get you to the substance of this, where Republicans, we know, are very unhappy with his oversight of an investigation that included using or looked at toll records of phones, so the logs of calls that had been made in the past of members of Congress. Although we do know from what we've heard so far about what Smith is saying that he believes that he wasn't choosing the members of Congress that they got the phone records on. That was because Donald Trump himself was trying to call members of Congress on January 6th, 2021 in the middle of that violence.
Isaac?
Yeah, look, first of all, the idea that this was a Biden conspiracy, it runs up to me against all the people that I knew in the Biden White House who were being driven crazy by how Jack Smith was not doing what they would have hoped he would have been doing and being more forceful and fast in proceeding with this. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't one, but it would certainly be news to a lot of the people in the Biden West Wing that they were part of a conspiracy. The other thing that Jack Smith has here is that, look,
when someone knows what they're doing is wrong and does it anyway, that's evidence of criminal intent. And Smith just laid that out in detail for the entire world to see. Now, you might be thinking, wait, didn't the Supreme Court already kill Smith's cases with that immunity ruling? And you're right, they did. But here's the thing. This testimony isn't about prosecuting Trump right now. This is about the historical record. This is about Congress having sworn testimony from the lead investigator saying Trump orchestrated an attack on the Capitol. And that testimony is now going to be used to fuel impeachment efforts, congressional investigations, and the historical narrative that will define Trump's legacy for generations. Because once something is in the congressional record under oath, it doesn't go away. It becomes part of the permanent historical record that journalists, historians, and future generations will reference forever.
January 6th happened. We all saw those images. And we also all saw those images of all the documents that were stored in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago when that raid happened. Again, that doesn't mean that the criminal procedure was done necessarily in exactly the right way, but there was a basis for these investigations. And that seems to be, the idea that they were even looked at all seems to be offensive to some of the people involved.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Jim Jordan said. Listen to, he's running this investigation. Listen to what he said this morning.
This was political. This was about going after the Republican Party. And most importantly, it was about going after our candidate for president, President Trump.
And this is really what it comes down to. Republicans are repeating over and over, and they did at the behest of Donald Trump back when he was actually being prosecuted for these things, which we did see with our own eyes January 6th. And the question of his culpability, that's clearly what the whole process is for, the judicial process is for.
Smith's testimony also revealed that he has evidence from Republican electors, people who were part of Trump's fake elector scheme, who admitted that the plan was to illegally overthrow the government, not challenge the results, not exercise their constitutional rights. Overthrow the government illegally. Those were the words used by someone on Trump's own team. Can you believe this? Trump's own allies, Republicans who were helping him try to stay in power, they knew what they were doing was illegal. They knew it was an attempt to overthrow the government, and they did it anyway because Trump told them to. That's the level of evidence Smith presented. That's the kind of testimony that destroys any plausible deniability Trump might have had. Trump is absolutely losing it over this testimony. He's been posting nonstop on his social media platform, calling Smith a deranged lunatic and saying this is all part of a witch hunt. But here's the problem. Smith testified.
So it's a question of whether you just leave it alone or whether you say, you know what, Republicans are going to call this political and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Donald Trump is very angry, right? And he believes there was a big conspiracy, Biden at the head of it to get him. And so now there is a retribution is happening. And you've seen that already with Jim Comey. You've seen that with Tish James. It's not necessarily going anywhere. We'll see what happens with Jack Smith. But this is essentially what he ran on. I will be your retribution. He talked to his MAGA supporters, and he feels like he has to deliver. And he also just feels aggrieved. And that is part of the glue that keeps MAGA together. And it also just fuels him. So much of his time is spent on this, on Truth Social, going after these people who he thinks went after him.
And it's also whether he's going to be, he said, I will be your retribution, but he's actually, for most of the year, spent time being his own retribution.
His own retribution. Exactly right. And that's in various ways during those 11 interviews that Susie Wiles did with Vanity Fair. She said that she doesn't think it's a retribution tour at one point, but she also admitted in a couple of instances that
under oath, under penalty of perjury, and he brought receipts. He's got witness testimony. He's got documents. He's got Trump's own words on tape admitting he lost the election. This isn't a he said, she said situation anymore. This is a federal prosecutor with evidence saying the president of the United States orchestrated an attack on democracy because he didn't want to give up power. And that testimony is now public record. It's going to be in history books. It's going to be used in congressional hearings. And it's going to destroy whatever credibility Trump had left when it comes to January 6th. The timing of this release is wild too. New Year's Eve going into New Year's Day, right as Trump's approval rating is sitting at historically low levels, right as over 120 members of Congress are calling for his resignation over various controversies, right as the GOP is fracturing heading into the 2026 midterms. It's like everything is converging at once to create the perfect political storm. And Smith's testimony is the spark that could set everything ablaze. So buckle up, because we're about to break down exactly what Jack Smith said, what evidence he has, and why this testimony might be the thing that finally ends Trump's political career for good. Let's get into the details of what Jack Smith actually said in this testimony, because it's way more damning than most people realize. And the mainstream media is giving you the headlines, but they're not connecting all the dots. So let me lay this out for you piece by piece. First, the setup. Jack Smith was subpoenaed by the House Judiciary Committee back in December. Normally, special counsel reports are confidential, but once Smith closed his investigations after Trump won the election because of DOJ policy that you can't indict a sitting president, Congress said, okay, if you're not prosecuting, we need to hear what you found. So they brought him in for a deposition. 8 hours. That's how long Smith testified. And according to multiple sources, he spent that entire time defending every aspect of his investigations, not just the January 6th stuff, also the classified documents case. He walked through the evidence, he explained his legal reasoning, and he made it crystal clear that these investigations weren't political. They were based on crimes. But it gets more specific. Smith testified that Trump knew the election fraud claims were false. How does Smith know this? Because he has testimony from people Trump talked to privately. According to Smith's evidence, Trump admitted to multiple people, including White House staff, family members, and advisors, that he lost the election. He said it out loud to other people. But then, and this is key, Trump went out and told the public something different. He told his supporters the election was stolen. He told state legislators there was massive fraud. He told election officials they needed to find votes. He organized rallies where he repeated these lies over and over. And all of this was while knowing privately, admitting that he'd actually lost. That's fraud. Like, legally speaking, that's fraud. When you knowingly make false statements to get people to do something, in this case to pressure officials and storm the Capitol, that's criminal fraud. Doesn't matter if you're the president. It doesn't matter if you believe you should have won. What matters is that you knew the specific claims you were making were false and you made them anyway. Smith also talked about the fake elector scheme in devastating detail. For people who don't know, after the 2020 election, Trump's team organized fake slates of electors in 7 states. These were people who claimed to be the official electors even though Biden won those states. The plan was to create confusion on January 6th so that Mike Pence could reject the real electors and accept the fake ones. Now, Trump's defenders have always said this was just exploring legal options, just challenging the results through official channels. But Smith's testimony destroys that narrative because, according to Smith, he has testimony from one of the Republican electors involved in the scheme. And that elector said, direct quote, "The plan was to overthrow the government illegally." Overthrow the government illegally. Those are the words used by someone on Trump's own team. Not challenge the results, not exercise our constitutional rights. Overthrow the government illegally. And this person said this during the planning stages, meaning they knew from the beginning that what they were doing was an illegal coup attempt. Smith testified that he has this on tape. He has documents. He has corroborating testimony from multiple people. This isn't some random accusation. This is evidence that Trump's fake elector scheme was, by the admission of his own people, an attempt to illegally overthrow the government. Now let's talk about January 6th itself. Smith walked through the timeline of that day in his testimony. He showed how Trump's speech at the Ellipse, the Fight Like Hell speech, was deliberately designed to send his supporters to the Capitol. He showed how Trump refused to call off the mob even as the violence was happening. He showed how Trump praised the rioters even after they'd been cleared out. But here's what's really damaging. Smith testified that Trump had been planning for January 6th for weeks. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't just a rally that got out of hand. Trump knew his supporters were coming. He knew they were angry. He knew many of them were armed. And he still told them to march to the Capitol and fight like hell, or you're not going to have a country anymore. That's not the behavior of someone who's surprised by violence. That's the behavior of someone who's orchestrating it. Smith also revealed that he has testimony from Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff. Now, Meadows got immunity to testify, which means he couldn't be prosecuted for what he said. And according to Smith, Meadows confirmed that Trump knew the election fraud claims were false. Meadows also testified about conversations where Trump discussed using January 6th as a way to pressure Pence in Congress. This is huge because Meadows was Trump's right-hand man. He was in every meeting, he heard every conversation. And if he's testifying that Trump knew the claims were false and planned to use January 6th as leverage, that's game over. That's the smoking gun. The person who was closest to Trump, who had the most access, who knew the most about what Trump was thinking and planning, is confirming under oath that Trump knew he lost and tried to overturn the election anyway. Smith also addressed the immunity ruling from the Supreme Court. You know, the one that basically said presidents have broad immunity for official acts. Smith testified that even with that ruling, the evidence against Trump is overwhelming because a lot of what Trump did, the fake elector scheme, the pressure campaign on state officials, organizing the January 6th rally, those aren't official acts. Those are campaign activities. And presidents don't have immunity for campaign activities. So Smith's argument is that yes, the Supreme Court made prosecution harder, but it didn't make it impossible. And more importantly, the evidence is still there. The crime still happened. And just because Trump can't be prosecuted right now doesn't mean he should get away with it politically. This distinction matters enormously because it means the evidence against Trump isn't going anywhere. It's preserved, it's documented, it's waiting. The testimony also revealed new details about the classified documents case. Smith testified that Trump personally ordered the movement of classified documents to Mar-a-Lago. He personally went through boxes. He personally decided what to keep and what to return. And when the government asked for the documents back, Trump personally obstructed the investigation by telling his lawyers to lie and hide evidence. Now, the DOJ dropped that case too, because of the immunity ruling and the sitting president policy. But Smith made it clear in his testimony that the evidence was rock solid. He had Trump on tape. He had witnesses. He had documents showing Trump's personal involvement in the obstruction. It was, in Smith's words, one of the clearest cases of obstruction I've seen in my career. That's a stunning statement from a prosecutor with decades of experience. He's not saying this was a close call or a difficult case. He's saying it was one of the clearest cases he's ever seen. And yet, because of the political realities of a sitting president, charges couldn't be brought. So why does all of this matter right now? Because Smith's testimony gives Congress everything they need to impeach Trump. Again, remember, impeachment isn't a criminal process. It's a political process. You don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You just need to show that the president committed high crimes and misdemeanors. And Smith just handed them a roadmap with evidence. House Resolution 939. That resolution calling for Trump's resignation that we've talked about before, it cites obstruction of justice as one of the charges. Well, Smith just spent 8 hours detailing exactly how Trump obstructed justice in multiple investigations. The Epstein cover-up, the January 6th investigation, the classified documents case. It's a pattern, and patterns are what you use to prove intent. Smith has established that this isn't isolated misconduct. This is a consistent pattern of behavior. Trump obstructs investigations when they threaten him. He abuses power to protect himself. He lies to the public and to officials to stay in power. Republicans are in a really tough spot now because they can't just dismiss Smith as a partisan hack. He's a lifelong prosecutor. He's worked under Republican and Democratic administrations. He's got decades of experience, and he testified under oath with evidence. So if Republicans try to defend Trump, they're essentially saying they don't believe sworn testimony from a respected prosecutor backed up by documentary evidence. And with Trump's approval rating at 36%, with over 120 members of Congress already calling for resignation, with the 2026 midterms coming up where history says the president's party loses seats, Republicans are doing the math, and the math says sticking with Trump is political suicide. The evidence is too strong. The testimony is too damning. The public is already turning against Trump on these issues. And every day Republicans defend him, they lose more moderate voters. Democrats obviously are loving this. They've got Smith's testimony, they've got the evidence, they've got Trump's approval rating in the toilet, and they've got history on their side for the midterms. This is exactly what they needed to energize their base and put Republicans on defense going into 2026. They can now run on a simple message. The special counsel said Trump caused January 6th. Your Republican representative is defending him. Are you okay with that? That's a devastating political attack, and it's going to be used in every competitive district across the country. But here's what's really wild. Smith's testimony doesn't just impact Trump's political future, it impacts his legal future too. Because even though he can't be prosecuted while he's president, once he leaves office in 2029, assuming he makes it that far, all of this evidence is still there. Smith's testimony is on the record. The witnesses are identified. The documents are preserved. So Trump could still face criminal charges after his presidency ends. The clock is ticking on statutes of limitations, but Smith has preserved the evidence. He's documented everything. Future prosecutors don't have to start from scratch. They can just use Smith's work. Let's break this down into what actually matters and where this is headed, because there's a lot to unpack here, and I want to make sure you understand the full scope of what's happening. Jack Smith's testimony destroys Trump's witch hunt defense. For years, Trump has said the investigations were all political, deep state, partisan prosecutors out to get him. But Smith testified for 8 hours explaining the evidence, the legal reasoning, and the basis for every charge. And he did it under oath, meaning if he lied, he goes to jail for perjury. So when Trump calls this a witch hunt, now he's not just disagreeing with prosecutors, he's calling sworn testimony false. And that's a much harder sell because Smith brought receipts. He's got witness testimony from Republicans. He's got Trump on tape. He's got documents. This isn't speculation or theory. This is evidence. And the fact that Smith specifically said January 6th does not occur without Trump, that's not legal jargon. That's not prosecutorial hedging. That's a direct statement of causation. Smith is saying Trump is responsible. Period. And for the historical record, that matters because 50 years from now, when people study this period, they're going to see the lead investigator saying under oath that the president caused an attack on the Capitol. That's not going to be forgotten. That's not going to be revised. That's going to be the historical verdict. This gives Democrats everything they need for impeachment. Like I said earlier, impeachment is political, not criminal. You don't need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You just need to convince enough members of Congress that the president did something impeachable. And Smith's testimony lays out multiple impeachable offenses. The fake elector scheme, that's conspiracy to defraud the United States. The pressure campaign on state officials, that's abuse of power. The January 6th speech and refusal to stop the riot, that's incitement and dereliction of duty. The obstruction in the classified documents case, that's obstruction of justice. Smith detailed all of it with evidence. So now when Democrats introduce articles of impeachment, and they will if they take back the House in 2026, they can literally just copy and paste from Smith's testimony. They don't need to do their own investigation. Smith already did it. He spent 2 years investigating with unlimited resources and grand jury power. All the work is done. And here's where it gets interesting. Mike Johnson said if Democrats win the House, Trump faces a third impeachment. Well, Smith's testimony basically guarantees that happens because Democrats would be crazy not to use this evidence. It's gift-wrapped. It's under oath. It's from a respected prosecutor. It's perfect for their purposes. They don't need to convince anyone that Smith is credible. His reputation speaks for itself. They don't need to build a case from scratch. Smith already built it. They just need to present it to the public and let the political process play out. This splits the Republican Party even further because now Republicans have to choose. Do they defend Trump against sworn testimony from Jack Smith, or do they distance themselves and try to save their own political careers? And look, some Republicans are going to stick with Trump no matter what. The diehard MAGA base isn't going anywhere. They'll say Smith is lying. The evidence is fake. It's all a conspiracy. But the Republicans in competitive districts, the ones who barely won last time, they can't afford to defend Trump on this. It's too toxic. Imagine being a Republican in a purple district. Your Democratic opponent is going to run ads saying, Congressman Smith defended Trump even after Jack Smith testified under oath that Trump caused January 6th. That's a devastating ad. That's the kind of thing that loses elections. So what do? You distance yourself. You say you're focused on local issues. You skip Trump's rallies. You quietly tell voters you think the testimony is concerning. This is exactly what happened with Nixon. Once Republicans started breaking ranks, the dam broke. And we're seeing the early stages of that now. Over 120 members of Congress calling for resignation. Republicans refusing to defend Trump on TV. Donors quietly pulling back. It's a slow-motion collapse. The evidence is preserved for future prosecution. Even though Trump can't be prosecuted while he's president, Smith's testimony ensures that all the evidence is on the record. The witnesses are identified. The documents are cataloged. The testimony is transcribed. So when Trump leaves office in 2029 or earlier, if he resigns or gets removed, prosecutors can pick up right where Smith left off. And that matters because statutes of limitations are ticking. Most federal crimes have a 5-year statute of limitations. The January 6th stuff happened in 2021, so the clock is running, but Smith's testimony preserves everything. It's like putting the case in a time capsule. Future prosecutors don't have to start from scratch. They can just use Smith's work. Now, realistically, prosecuting a former president is incredibly difficult. It's never been done before. There are political considerations, legal challenges, and practical problems. But the evidence is there. And if there's political will after Trump leaves office, the case is ready to go. The question isn't whether the evidence exists. It does. The question is whether there will be the political courage to use it. This is also about Trump's legacy. And I know that sounds fluffy, but it actually matters because what Smith said in his testimony that January 6th doesn't happen without Trump, that's going to be the historical verdict. That's what history books will say. That's what people will remember. Trump's been trying to rewrite the narrative around January 6th, saying it was a peaceful protest, saying the rioters were patriots, saying the real violence came from Antifa or the FBI. But Smith's testimony shuts all of that down because Smith has the evidence. He was there, he investigated it, and his conclusion is clear: Trump caused it. So no matter what happens politically or legally, Trump's going to be remembered as the president who tried to overthrow the government when he lost an election. That's his legacy now, and Smith's testimony cements it. So where does this go from here? In the short term, expect this testimony to dominate the news cycle. Democrats are going to use it in every interview, every speech, every campaign ad. They're going to hammer Republicans with it. Do you believe Jack Smith's sworn testimony? Yes or no? That's the question every Republican's going to get asked. Republicans are going to try to discredit Smith. They'll say he's biased, he's political, he's a Democrat tool. But that's a tough sell when Smith has evidence and testified under oath. And every time Republicans defend Trump, they're going to lose more moderate voters who are already uncomfortable with the January 6th stuff. The congressional revolt is going to grow. More Republicans are going to sign on to resolutions calling for Trump's resignation, not because they suddenly grew a spine, but because they're reading the polls and they know they're going to lose in 2026 if they stick with Trump. Trump's going to keep fighting. He'll post on Truth Social. He'll hold rallies. He'll call everyone traitors, but his power is fading. When your approval rating is 36% and the special counsel just testified that you caused an insurrection, you're not in a strong position. The 2026 midterms are shaping up to be a bloodbath for Republicans. Democrats are going to run on Trump's corruption, the Epstein cover-up, and now Smith's testimony about January 6th. They're going to tie every Republican to Trump and make them answer for his crimes. And based on historical patterns and current polling, Democrats are going to win big. If Democrats take back the House, which is likely, Trump gets impeached again. Third time, unprecedented. And if Democrats pick up enough Senate seats, which is possible if the Republican collapse continues, they might actually have the votes to convict. That would make Trump the first president ever removed from office. And even if that doesn't happen, Trump's last 2 years in office are going to be miserable. Constant investigations, congressional oversight, subpoenas for everyone in his administration. He'll be fighting legal battles on multiple fronts while trying to govern with a Congress that doesn't support him. But the biggest impact is what this does to Trump's hold on the Republican Party. For years, Trump has controlled the GOP through fear and loyalty. But Smith's testimony gives Republicans permission to break away. They can say, look, I supported the president, but this testimony from the special counsel is really concerning. That's their exit ramp, and a lot of them are going to take it. So, yeah, Jack Smith testifying that January 6th doesn't happen without Trump. That's not just news. That's a turning point. This is the moment when the walls really start closing in, when Trump's own party starts abandoning him, when his legal jeopardy becomes undeniable, when his legacy gets written in stone as the president who attacked democracy. The evidence is overwhelming, the testimony is under oath, and the political consequences are going to be devastating for Trump and for anyone who continues to defend him. This is the beginning of the end, and we're going to be here covering every single development as it unfolds.